Hello, welcome to our Saturday Roundtable, where we share what we've been doing with our projects and if we could use help with anything. And we're again in this weird. Our heads are the other way. It's gonna bother me. There we go. Now we're okay. Now Adriel's a little down, Bentley's up. We're good.
Yeah.
Who wants to start sharing their project now that my visuals are okay?
I can start. I've not done anything on Reason Score. I guess I hired someone a couple weeks ago to do some research, and I haven't gotten the results back. I heard that they weren't feeling well, and I told them I wasn't in a rush. I went ahead, paid some money, but it wasn't a lot. So get the results back on that. So Reason Score. I don't know if that's really my main project now at the moment. And then I'm working on a startup that's sweat equity, if it works. And that's about creating a new kind of book reader that makes it really easy to get to other content about what you're reading. So like images, archaeological data, additional content, and just it's a really nice user interface for that. And that's going to be closed source and game A. And then just a whole bunch of other little stuff, helping a lot of people out with things, and thinking more and more about the crowdsourced rating system and how we might want to integrate that into WikiLection or Conferati or both. Both, I guess. So yeah, so that's what I've been working on. As far as help, I still wouldn't mind debating about something in Reason Score if someone has an argument they want to have. A debate. And I don't know how to. I need to make a page on my blog that says, here are the things I'd like to debate with anyone, and then share that around, see if anyone bites. But yeah, so if anyone kind of watching this video has a topic that they think is controversial, and I could even take the devil's advocate on it, even if I agree on it, or I could probably find someone to debate you. So any controversial subjects, also especially ones that you think aren't getting enough media attention or enough people agreeing with it, this would be a good tool to explore that, the reasons behind why you think, and put it in a clear, what I think is a nice and clear way for people to understand it better, without having to dig in as deep, rather than reading a big document, because it's kind of hierarchical. You see the main headings and you dig down where you want. So yeah, anyone who's passionate about something that they think the world needs to listen to more, it might be a good experiment. So that's me.
I guess I can go next. So my project is WikiLection and Conferati, and they're both towards the same end of fighting misinformation in politics, science, and news. WikiLection focusing on politics, Conferati focusing on corporations, and sort of everything else that's not politics. I've been working with someone else that very well might be showing up in the next couple of minutes, Matush, with programming the prototype for WikiLection. We were at the point where he was working on sort of the really early version of the scoring for like what the person sort of seems to value and what their history is showing about them. It took a bit longer than I was expecting, but that's because apparently he went overboard and built out something that was sort of more than what I had in mind for the prototype. But in this case, that actually sounds pretty cool. I was planning just like a really flat, like I picked 6 sort of topics that might be interesting to score on. And the goal is to sort of hard code that into the prototype, and then that would be expanded over time. But he actually built something closer to what the end version will probably have in mind, where it's sort of easier to add new topics. He built out something that seemed interesting, but I wasn't sure how it would fit into the prototype yet, so it won't be in this version, where it's sort of like traits about that person. So similar to what their history says about them, like what they sort of value and what they're contributing, like actually traits about that person. Like I think tact what was one of them, that sort of thing. So that wasn't really something that I had considered, but sounds interesting. So in future versions, if there's a list that sort of is created of those terms, and seems like the events are a good way to add those in. Oh, that's the other thing was the events and event roles weren't actually planned for a couple of sprints, but that was added as a part of this. So it's good. I'm looking forward to the next version because it seems like we'll be jumping a couple of sprints ahead when this goes live.
Awesome. I'm Jubilee. My project is solution raising, as well as this new MLM that's actually an anti-MLM. And it was actually, while you were talking, Bentley, I was like, can we debate an MLM? Having this last week, I had a solution raising on drugs. I actually just had to look it up. I forgot what it was on. And we're having our next one this Wednesday on religion and more the community aspect of religion. And so that is what, and I've been kind of playing with learning Instagram for marketing. And I'm going to be trying to directly copy some of the ideas that are out there so that I know how to do it more so than for like my stuff, just to see how that works, see if I can figure out the fonts and everything else. So that is what I am up to. And help-wise, if we don't have anything else to do, if we get through the other stuff, either, like I said, debating the MLM, anti-MLM, because of the amount of business people that back it, and then people use it as backing of like, see, it's legitimate. No, it's not. The math. Anyway, that level. Or for me, I've been with this MLM that I'm creating, which I should stop calling it that, but it has that structure for recruitment as well as for financing some of us to leave Game A and go into Game B. But the product that I want to start with is very similar to something that Barbara Scheer talks about in her TED Talk. The TED Talk, of course, I just deleted it off to find what I did with solution raising. But it's something along the lines of your attitude isn't the dream killer, isolation is. And she talks about all of these powerful solutions that were basically crowd raised with a rather small crowd of 100 people that you wouldn't imagine were like someone wanted to dance with Patrick Swayze. Like, yeah, that's clearly not a wish that anyone can grant. Someone's like, actually, he's got a school down the road. This is when he was alive, clearly. School down the road. And yeah, I can take you there on Saturday. I've danced with him before. And so like those things happen time and time again. A species that had gone out extinct for these harps that this person makes was like, actually, yeah, my brother has a grove in Australia with those. Like the weirdness that ends up coming out. And she doesn't talk about the times that doesn't happen, but and how connected we are to each other's dreams. The more we can fulfill each other's dreams, the better off society is. And she has this one quote in there was like, if you give people your wish and obstacle, even if they don't like you, they want to solve it. Yes, that's kind of the that's part of the reason we're here for the draw is like, I love solving people's problems. I also like them and I like their ideas, but that's so. I don't know if that was a direct ask, but what would we like to do for? Yeah.
So that's interesting. So her concept, and I guess I heard you talk about it several times, but I haven't looked it up. Her concept of sharing dreams and wishes, and then letting the network effects just kind of take care of it. That's interesting.
Yeah, and she also there's another quote in there where she talks about, and I don't necessarily agree with this language, but how society is constantly making you do what you don't want to do. So we're going to make each other do what you do want to do. It's like, make you do what you want to do is a little bit of a stretch, but help you do what you want to do, right? If you want to run a marathon, well, why aren't you running it, right? What are the obstacles in your way? And actually having groups of people that are helping each other crowdsource solutions, right? Like we do with our projects, but for your life, and creating the tools together that are more meta, right? If everyone's like, how would we all eat better? There's going to be tools that we create through that. But even without, because I don't have the tech, even without that, just having a conversation on Zoom with people where you're just doing wish and obstacle can be a product from day one, except that it's starting with 10 people. I don't think 10 people is when we get to 100, it'll be enough to break out into groups. But at 10, it's more about doing it on video, sharing it, and watching it on your own time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. And just that brings up another thought I had when I was going through the protocol.love founding documents that we were talking about yesterday. They talked about how are you going to measure the metrics of your project or group. And I was thinking, and I guess we're going to go over that next Friday, but I've always liked the concept of measuring satisfaction. A lot of people call it happiness, but happiness can be a short-term thing, and satisfaction. Happiness means all those ranges, but satisfaction is just a more specific form of happiness. That's when you think back, your overall happiness over a period of time. And then I was thinking, well, how do you actually measure that? And you could say, how happy are you on a scale from 1 to 10, and then just watch the numbers change. But what's interesting is that a lot of people, your scale of happiness changes over time. It's like, especially if you've been in an abusive relationship or someone had mental health issues, sometimes just getting out of bed in the morning is a success, right? And then later on, if you're able to resolve those issues, then, you might say, well, this last week or this last month, this last year, I've been, I'm not as satisfied, but my satisfaction, anyways, the scale that I'm thinking of has changed. So I wasn't sure how to kind of measure that, because at some point someone say, oh, I'm at 100%. And then they're like, well, I'm feeling better than I did when I said I had 100%. So now I don't know what to do. So it may be something like, how much more satisfied are you than if you look over the last year compared to the previous parts of your life? What percentage happier are you? 50% more satisfied or whatever. And maybe then you just kind of track that stuff over time, and you per person, this is the percentage of satisfaction more that we've increased in the world. Not even per person, but you add up all the people and all their satisfaction increases. So that was literally just throwing that idea out based on previous. I haven't really thought long enough to see whether has negative externalities.
I like the idea of satisfaction, because it's also
Is that like
people are more likely to say if they're satisfied rather than happy. It feels almost, I don't know, gratuitous to say, yeah, I'm happy. It's like it almost is like, but you're not. Whereas it's like being satisfied, and that's part of with this product, whatever it is that we create, is like, is it satisfying? Not just to have your wish granted, but to grant other people's wishes, right? To help other people come up with this. What would make this more satisfying? How could we improve it more and more, so that, and only, right, that if someone's getting all their wishes granted and someone else is getting none of theirs, that's a problem. Whereas if we're creating the tools so anyone can do it, I like the idea of, I don't know how to measure it, but just to ask, are you satisfied? And that it can expand over time. So you can compare it to the past, but you can't necessarily compare it to the future, because you don't even know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. What were you going to ask, Adriel?
Is that personal satisfaction, or is that satisfaction with a certain thing, like with
I think
product?
Personal satisfaction. I think all of the products we're building is the goal is that the individuals participating and the individuals not participating, because we're doing OmniWin, right? So the total volume of satisfaction increases over the world. So I would think that we would say, we increase satisfaction by 200,000%, because that was 200 people with 10% or something, 10% increase in satisfaction, something like that. Though people may not think in percentages, I do, so I have to figure out another way to say it. But that's, I think, how the math would add up.
Because it sounds a bit like a sort of satisfaction version of an NPS score.
Yes, and actually, I was thinking just while we were talking about this that I want something like the NPS score, which is the Net Promoter Score, which we might go through, but something like that where it could be,
Right.
this could be a standard way to measure Game B projects. So, and tell other people, hey, if you want to kind of get a feel for what impact you're having on the world, here's what we suggest. So just doing a little write-up on this might be interesting. But yeah, Jubilee, are you familiar with the Net Promoter Score?
No. I'm writing it down, but no,
So
I'm
just
not.
yeah. So and also for other people watching, we should explain anyways. I shouldn't call you out, but it's what you do is, and you've probably seen these surveys. So if you're doing a startup, you'll ask someone who just used your product, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to share this with someone else? Is the common phrasing, but there's several other phrasings, and basically you drop if the score's an 8, you ignore it. If it's a 9 or a 10, it's like a +1. And if it's below 6, then it's a -1 or something like that. There's some way to kind of do the math, but basically 8 is just people being polite. So if they don't say a 9 or a 10, you're not getting anything. And so then you can,
I would give everything an 8 unless it was literally my child. Like I'd be like, yeah, I'm very likely to tell someone to go to this restaurant. That's an 8.
Yeah, that's why they know to ignore that, because everyone's that way. At least Americans. In other countries, I think they do like 5 for the middle, but us, we're polite. And I say, North America.
Yeah, no, and that also, right? Like with what I'm building, that is the number one. Are you going to recommend this, right? Not the business structure. Would you recommend the product, right? Like, are you getting satisfaction out of this, out of these conversations, out of fulfilling people's wishes, out of getting your wish fulfilled, out of seeing the things we're creating out of it, which will be further on down the road, getting to see other people get more satisfaction, right? Some people are not going to be satisfied by other people getting satisfaction, and that's okay. This isn't the product for them. It's I would get a lot of satisfaction about watching other people have satisfaction, like especially if I felt I was part of that.
Yeah. And I think the NPS score is kind of a proxy for satisfaction, because you're not going to share it unless you're receiving satisfaction. But it'd probably be hard to kind of measure going forward to show a total increase on an individual, because it has a top out at 10. So yeah. So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about. And if we could shift the topic a bit, so Adriel, I wanted to just chat while I have you on the phone. You and Martouche are going forward with this part that's now kind of overlapping with this new, the other piece that we're talking about doing together, which is the Is there a danger that Martouche is spending a lot of time that is going to be not used? And do we want to rush into having a conversation about this bigger tool to prevent that? Or is it like we want a prototype and that's worth maybe throwing it away in a couple months?
So which part is it overlapping with?
So if he's doing politicians and what their attributes are and legislation, that I think is the tool that says you have a thing and you can give it attributes and you can rate those attributes.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think his code is going out far enough to be used in this other tool, because I think it's still hard coded to some extent. Like you said, it's less hard coded than you'd expected. But I don't think it'll be reusable, because I don't think he has it abstracted out the entity. He still has a table for people. Well, I mean, your whole system has a table for people and a table for legislation, but this new system would just have
that. Like the part for rating, it sounds like sort of can be used for multiple tables, where, like, for example, there's both event roles that say like what role a person had in an event, and then the corresponding event, and then there's the legislation and how the person voted as 2 totally separate things, and it's able to score on both. And the thing is that as we add more information for a person that doesn't fit into those 2 buckets, it sounds like it'll be able to score on those as well.
Yeah, it'd be a completely kind of unstructured system. You'd have things, and those things have attributes, and the things have relations between them and other things. So I guess I just didn't want him going down doing a lot of work, and I don't know how much of that is going to be have to be undone.
Right. Yeah, well, so it sounds like you can ask him.
Morning.
Hey, Matush.
And this may not be the right forum, so if we have other things to talk about, then because this is kind of this could end up being a deep technical dive.
Right.
With Martush, we were just talking about the work that you're doing on. Is that the work that you're doing right now for Wiki-election.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then I have that document about kind of the crowdsource rating system, and they kind of overlap quite a bit. So I was wondering if before you do much more work, we want to figure out the timing of this other app and whether what you're doing can be reused in that app, or if you're going to have to be throwing away some work in the next couple of months or whatever.
As I understood the initial idea about the crowdsource ranking system, the most recent code I wrote was supposed to be more abstracted, so it could be reused in the general idea of being able to configure from higher level items, relations, and scores, and assign scores to totally anything that the user would like to.
Okay.
Hopefully this is the right direction. Do I have the access to the document with the application? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was an open. I can try and find it. I just shared it, and I don't know if it's written out enough to be clear enough. So it might be useful if we took some time off this later on for you to show me what you did, and then we could talk about how close that is to that vision. But if you abstracted it out all the way to the level of entity, which could be a person or legislation, and then attribute, which could be anything, and then a rating on it, then it sounds like you've just started on the app, which is good.
Yeah, entity is what I call the components, and yes, for entities at least, it was easier to make them be something configurable in one YAML file. And sorry about the noise. And relations are slightly harder, but it's doable. So I did some work in this direction as well.
Yeah, so I would like the entities to be in the database, so they could be added by end users. But that may not be too big of a change. But in concept, it's still data, right? It's not hard code like tables, so that's good. And solid objects. Okay, and do I have access to? I do have access to that code, right? Let's see. I'll have to look. I can look later. Well, we can hit this up a little later. But it sounds like you were making it abstract enough that would be good. Your attempt was to implement that, so that's good to hear. I just was afraid that you were like adding very distinct tables in the new system and stuff. And I knew you were doing more abstract than Adriel had thought, but I wasn't sure how far you went. So that sounds really good. Cool. Anyone got any other topics?
Nothing comes to mind.
Jubilee, do you want to talk some more about? You said something if we run out of time, but I can't remember what it was.
Just if you guys if we want to focus on maybe without tech, because no one's coding anything at the moment, what that could look like, where we're helping each other figure out what we want out of life and how to achieve it together with 10, 100, 1,000 people, even though the point is to figure it out with the 10 for the 100, with the 100 for the 1,000. But if I have something especially for the 10 with a vision to share with people, so that they can kind of, because that's the part with a lot of the stuff that I introduce to the world is like people don't see the big vision. And so therefore they don't see this, like how the seed grows into that, right? How the MVP becomes something amazing. I want them to not need to see that they're just in it, experiencing it and being like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I can see other people's wishes and I want to grant them. And even just looking at the TED Talk itself of like, okay, this is how this goes. Seeing the possibility through Barbara and then having a space to actually start doing that and drawing the first 10 people to create that better project for the 100. But thoughts on what that could look like for, I mean, I have my own ideas, but.
Yeah, I was wondering, did you want us to hear what you kind of said before or generate our own? I can tell you what I thought in the past, but it's as usual, it's more on the tech side. So, I mean, I want a website where a person can go take a quiz and it would then suggest people, websites, resources, videos that would take them up that one more level of satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And I guess if you're saying a low tech solution, then maybe it is just have a meeting and have a person in the hot seat and they kind of talk about either what their problems are or the things that they'd like to improve or just a wish. I think framing as a wish is probably the best way to do it. And then having the people kind of brainstorm now. And I guess maybe not even, like you said, maybe not even in person, have a a Facebook group where you can post a video or text, say what your wish is, and then just the community, the understanding is the community's goal. And you're not supposed to post anything unless you're either encouraging or, providing a resource for that person. So I guess just another Facebook group would suffice.
There is already a Facebook group by Barbara Scheer. She died a few months ago, but it honestly doesn't get, even though it has a ton of people in it, because everyone watches the TED Talk, finds it, and then joins it, it doesn't have the same inspiration. And that's part of how I'm building it, right? That the 10 find the 100. It's like, how do we create a good enough product for the 10? What I'm playing with right now is I have this before I rewatched the Barbara Scheer one and got all inspired by that again. But 4 questions that I want them all to answer in 2-minute videos of like, hey, what could you do with $120,000 a year? What does your life look like that? Which is not going to be buying islands and retiring your family, right? It's not lottery winning amounts. It's like, oh, I'm going to focus on gardening. I'm going to do like, what does your life look like? What does your community look like? What are you spending your time doing? And what questions do we want to ask each other? And watching these videos and getting a sense for who each other is. Because I don't even want, especially with the first people that are getting involved, I want them to be inspired by each other's vision of the future, right? That it's like, it's not about me getting 120,000. It's about what we're creating once we have that freedom, right? What is actually going to exist in the world. And that's easier with Game B people who, again, they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to make 120,000. That sounds like that's too much for me. I want to like spread that out. I'm like, I love it. Okay, that's part of it, right? You split it in 2 and you give 60 away.
I think we're
very choppy for anyone.
Yeah. I think you and I are at speed, so I think Jubilee kind of froze up. But yeah, they can donate the money any way they want after they get it, if it's 120,000.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty easy problem to solve, making too much money. You got charities in your area, you got some family you could give it to. Like there's a lot, and then you can decide that month over month. Like you had an unexpected bill this month. Sure. Don't donate as much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jubilee is hard frozen now.
Yeah. Or she's just doing some really weird improv.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to hold still and get the blur in your movement.
Yeah. And
at the same time.
Yeah. Weird audio.
There she goes. All right, video's gone.
Incredible amount of animals to rescue. So there's not such a thing as there's no such thing as too much money.
Right.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah. There's always something to do.
Yeah. I think totally such thing as like it can get bad if you're hoarding it or possibly spending it on nefarious things. But even if you had $1 billion, there's no shortage of people and groups that need help and animals, as Madhu said. So I mean, yeah, it's a very easy problem to solve.
Yeah.
I volunteer if you need to offload some money. Just get in touch.
Which is, I mean, having as many people as possible. And that's also what changed from previous, is I was like, we're going to get the 10 people together and we're going to figure out a product. And I realized before with process raising, that doesn't really work. There has to be something that is like, this is what it is, brings the people in so they know what they're getting into, and then we can improve it together, and then we can branch off and do other things. But to find that piece of it. So it is finding 10 people that can meet at the same time, next to impossible, especially if what I'm trying to do is retire those 10 people, right? I'm not... like I want it to work for the 10 people, right? I don't want it to like pick a time like I do with solution raising. If you can come, great. If you can't, it doesn't. So having it be, right, everyone upload a 2-minute video for these 4 questions and watch each other's. And what questions do we want to keep asking, right? What is your wish obstacle? What is your, and maybe that's it. Maybe I just asked that one question instead of the 4 that I've done, because I think maybe people are more akin to answer that one and want to help each other. I think I just answered my own question. Okay. And then from there, we can branch off to what is, like, watch this video, watch Barbara Shear, and what is your wish obstacle? And watch each other's.
And you just kind of tell them, record it as a video. And then, you just kind of list out the steps. And so you've mentioned a couple things. So you have is this all one thing? The wish thing and the MLM and the retiring, or are those different?
The MLM is the retiring. That's the whole purpose of is to get people out of game A into game B so that they can focus on their projects and create what all of these people, there's 3 of them, like all of these people are already doing the stuff that they would do in game B, right? Like they're already showing up and doing it for free. This isn't go find your friends and family, convince them to do good for the world. Like, you guys are already doing good for the world. How do we get you paid for it? And you guys have more of tech skills to be able to actually get paid for it already. But there's other people who don't, right? Like what I'm doing in the world currently, no one's paying me for it. But it is powerful. And I see other people like that, Eric and Heather and David, who and Marcus, or sorry, Mark, why do I call Marcus? Mark was one of the people who's like, I don't know, I want to live off of less and less money. I'm like, that's part of the inspiration though. Because if we can showcase that, but show it in a way that's connected, right? Where you're not telling people that they have to eat less and less and consume less and less. Well, they're not getting more and more. We're getting more and more, right? We're getting more community. And so if this makes that the community is the product, right? The more people that join, the more we have wishes, the more we have obstacles to be able to create. And it's already omni-win because the more people that are there, the better. But only if they can see that vision, right? Because as we grow, we can become more of like a Pinterest where we're crowdsourcing, right? It's not just about, yes, this beautiful house that I live in. No, you can, like, how do we actually get you in there? How do we actually help you decorate your house? How do we actually help you get a better diet? And doing that in small groups and bigger groups, right? More of like 100-person Zoom, or so one person's like, yes, I want to be a cowboy. And someone's like, hey, which is one of the things in Barbara Shears. Someone was like, hey, you're an accountant. My cousin has a ranch in Alberta, and he like goes and trades time to be a cowboy. Anyway, to create that together. And I didn't answer the question, did I?
Yeah, let me parrot back what you said, see if I'm understanding. So the place I'd like to start is goal of getting 10 people together and finding a way to have them retire from game A. The step to get to that is to build a product, and you want it to be something that they derive direct value out of and that they're willing to share. And then you through these different, adding a 0 each time to the number of people involved, you're building that product, and the proceeds from the people paying for access to that product is what retires those 10 and potentially more people from game A.
Yeah.
And so a couple things, if you chose, it could be a different product. This is just the product that's inspiring you right now that you think meets that need of the MLM. And so you're also open to that product being different when you get the 10 people together and say, if we experiment and it changes, it's like, well, that's fine, as long as the goal is it's a game A retirement scheme.
Basically, yes. That is very transparent about that,
Yeah.
right? That is like, we get that the millionth people getting involved are never going to be able to retire off of this. The product has to be better and better. We have to create UBI from the bottom up and the top down, right? And that is what we're doing, part of which is Wish Obstacle, right? Because this is just how can we crowdsource, and then eventually the food apps, everything you need to be able to not necessarily need to be in a group. You can use all the products that we've created as well.
Yeah, let me just pontificate a bit on something I realized several years ago that actually left me to quitting my job. I was building efficiency, so I took this department that had like 20 full-time people and 100 part-time people. And I automated the processes. The 100 part-time were like seasonal. During this big crunch, we could hardly get done with a whole bunch of temps coming in. And I automated it to where you don't need all those temps. And the department could have shrunk, but we increased what the department did. So the department actually ended up growing. But then I realized that I basically made it to where the company could make the same money off of half the staff. I did not receive the income for those 50 people that I replaced. I did not get paid for the efficiency that I created. Someone else did, who didn't do the work. Now they created the environment and they hired me to do the work. And I agreed to a contract of getting, paid regardless of how much value unrelated to the amount of value I provide. And then I'm like, well, okay, so I need to move into a situation to where the value I create, I get, which is very much game A before we got all this game B stuff. But I love your concept of limiting. But the only reason that situation came out is because there was someone at the top of the thing that said, I deserve all the money I can extract out of all these people, as long as I can convince them to sign a contract where they're not reaping the benefits of the work they're not getting the lion's share of the work, that the value of the work that they're producing for the public and for the good, or just for society. I get that because I started it and because I invested my time and energy in it. And it just seems like there's something broken there. Two things. One thing, you do not need unlimited income, and there's a diminishing return. So that dollar spent on that person who started the company is of less economic value than that dollar given to one of the employees. So we're seeing that efficiency dissipated out into uselessness. And then, it's not really fair to the employees who should be getting paid to some extent to the value. But then, I think one of the problems is that we've been getting far more and more efficient over the last 100 years, exponentially. Couple hundred years, I guess, 1800s, and since the Industrial Revolution and agriculture before that, but Industrial Revolution was just exponentially thing. It's like, how come people? I mean, okay, caveat: our lives are much better. I'm talking on a computer across the country, across the world, and so we are getting benefits from this. I'm in air conditioning. That's really nice in Texas. But it's not. But why do we have all these kind of ancillary stuff? But my life is not less stressful and is not more satisfactory. That should have been the first thing we solved for, not hoping that this capitalism and this organizations and this government would produce that accidentally. So I think one way to short circuit into that, your concept of limiting the gains to just an arbitrary number and maybe having that adjusted and tweaking that. But in general, just saying, I'm going to produce a lot of value, but after a certain amount of value, it's going to go out to everyone else. And that will reduce the stress of everyone. And that will make it to where the interactions I have with all these other human beings will be more positive, right? So I'm paying, in effect, to have a better environment by not hoarding the value that I'm creating or giving that value I created to someone else who just happened to start, start a company. And science is kind of saying that those people were skilled, but mostly lucky. So that's the thing I started hitting on a while back, but just until recently, you're talking about kind of capping out the value. And I don't think a lot of people would have some people will say, well, if Elon Musk couldn't make $1 billion, he wouldn't have started the company. And I'm like, BS. You could pay that guy $120,000 and he would still be trying to get people on Mars. Bill Gates would still be trying to do the computer. Mark Zuckerberg would still be trying to connect the world. None of these people were motivated by the money, and none of them are currently motivated. There's no benefit in them in making more money now. There's no value, but they're getting
except for the addiction. I do think they're addicted to it, and now they're in that cycle.
Right.
But if you already know that's
harmful.
The cap,
so it's harmful to them and harmful to everyone else.
Yes.
Anyways, I'm repeating all the stuff that Jubilee's been
I think you
saying,
explained that beautifully. I was taking notes. I was like, yeah, and because that is the product, right? The product is that what you're giving into is to reduce stress and increase satisfaction for yourself and for everybody else, not just our membership, but everybody else as well, because everyone's invited eventually. But that is the product, right? Like that is what we are doing together. It just so happens that some of the people who get in first have more of a chance of getting to 120,000, but there's a ton of people who will get in later who have a chance of being employees for 25 hours a week at $60,000 a year, and UBI for $60,000 a year that is gifted to the people who have the most impact, spending the most hours, spending the most impact on the stuff. And so there's other ways. It's not a typical MLM, and then it is capped at 120,000 for what each individual can make.
Yeah.
And I actually am going to ask, because I believe both Matoush and Bentley are married. Do you think it's fair to have 120,000 cap per family? Because that's one of the reasons I need 120,000 is because I'm a single parent with a disability. And so I'm like, right, there isn't another parent. And so if there's, especially at the top layers, if I said, hey, you can't get your spouse as one of the other 120,000 people, like they could be a 60,000 person, but there's, what does that feel like to you? Does that feel like you would want your spouse to also make 120,000 or? I'm just curious since I don't.
It's a good question. So there are certainly significant financial benefits to two people living together. And so then the question is, should we be able to keep those benefits or hoard those benefits depending on your attitude towards it? So my immediate emotional reaction is that sucks, but intellectually it's like I think it's not obvious that we should both obviously get 120 and there should be some sort of cap. And then like there's the question is, if you have 6 kids, should you get more or not, right? And then but then are we incentivizing babies, which we don't really want to do on a planet that we already have like 7 billion? So I think that's something that will take some very serious thought, but I don't have any immediate. I
guess what I'm going with is maybe my suggestion is like, because I know who I want to retire is also Adriel for, because he's my brother. Like it's like, but at the same time, our finances aren't intertwined, and he's also up to good in the world, which is very different than how I feel about like my mom, who I'm like, yeah, I want, you know what I mean? I think she's also up to good, but not in the same way as Game B, right? Like she would spend her time doing church work and looking after her husband, but like there's a difference. And so the idea of someone signing up their spouse because they just want to have that extra 120,000 when their spouse isn't necessarily up to good, especially for the first few tiers, is, and I think just having that conversation is probably enough. Like, you do you.
Sorry, can you? I thought that like the 120,000 was if you're directly recruiting those people, and then if you're giving it to somebody else, that's where it's capped at 60.
Yeah, and the 120 is you recruiting. Right? But the first few layers are the way we're recruiting is we're helping each other. It's not if one person can recruit 1 million, they get all this money. Right. We're helping each other build it out in a very structured way. And so the first 10, 100, even 1,000 people
So
are
to say,
nearly
like,
guaranteed
as
to get to
a
120,000.
single person, right? Okay, yeah, because as a single person, like, it's me and my dog. So if I can have the same cap as Matoush, who's married and has kids, I don't think that makes sense because he's gonna have a lot more expenses
Yeah, but that's part of it. Is like you have a lot of time to devote to game B, probably too. But yeah, and someone else could collect kids, and like meaning what they're here to do on the planet is take care of kids, right? To be a foster parent, to do those kind of things. And I mean, part of this is if we're retiring people from game A, and they're able to do their game B, right? And so some people might be foster parents, including they're getting money from the state, but they get enough money that they get to do it more ethically and be social workers and do things that game A does not pay well. But if it's where their heart and soul is, or you know what I mean, they get to choose where they're spending their time. So we don't need to talk about this. I'm just obsessed with these at the moment. But if people are okay, I'm also okay. Continue.
So I actually have to confess that I do have 3 dogs, and they are quite big. So, and they each definitely deserve like 1,000 at least for the food and the fact that they keep the mailman like away from the property. So, yep. As for the 125, my family usually acts as a single unit. So. I was lucky enough to be able to bring in enough so we could like share duties, and comparing our lives to like parents who both have to work 5 to 7 or like whatever time, 9 to 5, and leave the children in a like kindergarten, so from the earliest age. It didn't seem right, and it's not good from the developmental point of view for the children. It's kind of disastrous. So we decided that if there is enough money coming in, then we can. And I work remotely for the past 10 years, so it's been very lucky in that respect. And yeah, I didn't think too much about it. It would be nice if, at least in the initial stage, I guess it would be just me, and it's okay. And my wife, when she is, she would join, but it would be like on the same kind of, not because affiliation to myself, but as an independent game B unit, something like this. Otherwise, it would be dangerous because there are people with families who are very keen on just bringing relatives and friends in to get the share of the goods, and yeah, there is some danger there. And one thing I wanted to add is UBI is great as a temporary measure to get people out of game A, like the vicious circle, and stop them from being hamsters and just run and run. By the way, there is a great book by David Graeber, and it's called Bullshit Jobs. And the idea is that in capitalism, there's kind of a natural law or something saying that all resources need to be monetized, and there's no such thing as a resource being left alone. So we are resource obviously too as humans, because we have energy and time and everything, and it means when we are functioning in the system takes care of making sure that we don't have any free time to do stuff that cannot be monetized. And there is something about this, like, and when there is not enough real work, extra stuff is created, like being a corporate lawyer. It doesn't make sense whatsoever to be a corporate lawyer unless you have a system that creates such jobs, such positions artificially. There is nothing of value to this, and I'm sorry if any corporate lawyer is watching this, but still, the point is there is real work, and there is work that is kind of artificial, and it's not necessary, and it does not create much good in the world. So there's that. And the point of the retirement is, apart from retirement of game A as a system, is for individuals to be able to free the resources, the time and everything from game A and move to game B. But it starts with money. But the real point and the real purpose of the UBI is not to get enough money to buy all the resources we need, the food, the shelter, the water, the everything, but to reduce cost of everything to zero, because we can. And this is the only way it can function, because UBI is great, but what needs to be remembered is it's only one side of the equation. The other side is cost and what the UBI is spent for on. And if the cost of living is going up, and it will, if UBI is like everyone is on UBI, then there's no reason for cost of living to be, cost of living to go down. Because again, if there is spare resources, like people have too much money, the too much money will be taken by the system. That's like natural law. It just happens. And yeah, so the main point, and I guess I can say that it's the main point of game B is to create enough foundation for the basic things humans need, so they can cost precisely zero. Like community hydroponic gardens, for example, like 3D printed buildings, like whatever.
And that is the idea, is that's what I mean by we're tackling it from both ends. There's only so much money to be doled out in an actual wage, right? If we're pooling our resources, but we're also creating the systems, hopefully, that give everybody access to that. And part of the idea of the cap as well, if you're at 120,000 and inflation's still happening in game A, your money's getting less and less. Like, the way to get more is to create those systems. The way to get more is to find more satisfaction and find more ways to reduce your living costs and work with other people to do that. And hopefully we're incentivized to do that, at least the 1,000 that we're retiring and the 10,000 that we're retiring. They're not gonna be like, I'm 120,000, I don't care. It's like, that's not enough to not care. It really isn't. It's not even the highest income bracket.
Yeah, so your idea is to start off with this kind of wish sharing community, but then it could eventually grow into here's a group that's working on food security and free food for everybody, and here's someone that's working on a minimum housing, and people join the projects that they're interested in, and
and there's enough money. I mean, the idea is people are paying $25 a month. $5 goes to that recruitment structure and to paying people residual income. And part of the other money that's left over is also paying people on projects and paying income. It's just not in that structure. So you have $20 from every person going towards creating communities, going towards creating projects, going towards creating products that we're all going to have access to. And so solution raising is a part of this, right? That like when we're bigger, I don't think everyone wants to do a solution raising, but everyone wants to use what comes out of solution raisings. And so to be able to say, hey, look, we all have food. It turns out we all eat food. How many of you want to do a solution raising? Let's go do a solution raising. Let's make the best idea. And then everyone has access to it. But I don't think that's the product to start with, because it's not as big. It's not as much of an enticing thing to most people to come be part of it.
So do you have Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh no, you started. You go first. I've been talking a lot more than you today.
Just wanted to say one thing about something in particular. There is no such thing as free food, and as much as there are no such thing as free dinner, something like that, free lunch. The key, and I guess the vocabulary is something along like self-sufficiency of communities, local communities. It just drew my attention because like saying free food is like inviting some specific types to point out that no, it's not free food. There is no such thing as free food, and actually there is. The difference is that there is food that it can be grown, and everyone in the community just adds some time, energy, or like water resources to grow it. So it's theoretically free because it does not cost money, but it still requires the community to do something. So yeah.
Food and housing and the other things will always require some sort of labor until we get really good robots, and then we're on a completely different scale, and then we have to worry about, are we enslaving the robots? But that's a different thing.
We'll tackle that when we get there.
So yeah, there is always the thing, the concern that people won't want to do that, so let's say you did have it to where everyone got without having to do any work, got housing and food and clothing, right? Your basic minimum stuff, and Netflix, right? That's a requirement. No, I'm just joking. But at least like housing, food, and clothing, food, shelter, what's it called? Anyways, would then there be anyone to produce the housing and the food and the clothes to do the work?
The easy answer is yes, and it's easy because I can imagine if UBI got popular and everyone would be able to not work, 90% of the population would spend the first year or two just sitting on the couch, drinking beer and watching sports. That's totally
recovering from
exactly. But then I like to believe in like human spirit and curiosity, and just it would be so boring to sit for the sofa for longer than a year. And the thing about self-sufficiency is that at some point, if there is a local community that has only people that do nothing, like no one does just nothing, and at some point they would run out of stuff, right, of the food, and there would be very direct clue that unless we start doing something, and I guess some people would be first to notice and first to willing to do something about it, there will be direct connection between us not having food and us being able to produce food, because we have the blueprints of a hydroponic garden, and we have everything. We have seeds, we have knowledge, and and that direct connection is missing right now in the world when people are on like government help. They just get money, and the from money as being something given, and then food that you go and buy, and you don't have to produce it. And it makes, my guess is, it makes people not notice and not understand and not appreciate the connection between what they do. And that's actually one thing about capitalism as well, that it makes this very big gap between what you do and what you consume, right? Just crossed my mind that there is this, it abstracts you from reality, from life.
So I really like the idea of self-sufficiency. It's something that Juan brings into with the Felice community. I can't remember the full name of that is, I'm afraid. But is that you're helping people achieve self-sufficiency, just like when you're a parent, hopefully you're helping your kid become independent. Yeah. But there's something about the word self-sufficiency that doesn't work for me, because I know, or at least if I maintain this health for the rest of my life, I can't be self-sufficient, right? I can't grow my own garden and do all the own stuff. I have to be in community to do that. And then I contribute a hell of a lot, just maybe not in a divide by this and you're doing this amount of work way. And so is there another word that like, just like satisfaction instead of happiness, is there another word that like brings the community aspect of it? That like, yes, I want autonomy over my own individual self, and I want to choose when I'm contributing and get what I need and give what I can, but not as an individual, but as an individual. Can we make a word up?
That's not what I yeah, I know that self-sufficiency is used again in the current system to point out that individuals are self-sufficient, and they should be, because a consumer is just one unit. And when you act as family or group, then you kind of interfere with the dynamic and desired outcome of how you function, as the system likes to see you, as individuals. As the individualism is one of the negative aspects. But self-sufficiency can be achieved mostly in groups, like 100, 150, the Dunbar's number, tribes. And I don't know what the good word is, but
maybe just sufficient community or something like that.
From Greek, it would be autarky, just to add something. And what John Verwecki used to describe in slightly different context, but Sangha is like the community which is very purposeful, and which I'm not sure about the word itself, but to me it resonates with a community in which you do feel like a part of it, and you build the group, and the group in return is elevating you to, say a group, but more. It's a network and something very, extended family, something sort of.
Well, I think we're over time, so that's probably a good place to stop, right?
All right. Thank you all. Got the wheels spinning. Get more, because I needed that. That's what I needed, was more wheels spinning. But you help with the language, which is definitely needed. So thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you. And we'll see you on Friday. So between now and next Friday, we'll be doing our individual mission vision, and meeting next Friday to go over what those look like and how they overlap. Hopefully a lot. All right. Goodbye.